I still remember the smell of pine the moment we pulled off the highway and onto the dirt road that led to the trailhead. The windows were rolled down and cool mountain air rushed inside, tangling my hair and making me feel lighter than I had in weeks. Dawson sat behind the wheel, drumming his fingers against it in rhythm with some old country song he'd insisted was perfect for road trips. I couldn't help but laugh at his off-key singing, and he grinned, flashing the same reckless smile I'd grown so used to. Dawson wasn't just my camping partner, he had been my closest friend for years. We'd met during freshman orientation in college, two strangers thrown together in a chaotic mix of schedules and new faces. Somehow, from that very first awkward conversation, we had clicked. Dawson had this way of making people feel at ease, of turning silence into comfort rather than tension. And me? I guess I was the listener he needed. Over time, our bond had grown so strong that people often mistook us for brothers. When he suggested a weekend camping trip to escape the noise of city life, I didn't hesitate. The truth was, I needed it more than I realized. Work had been exhausting, my mind cluttered with deadlines and half-finished thoughts. The idea of losing cell service, of trading neon lights for fireflies, felt like a blessing. The trail wasn't too long, but the heavy packs strapped to our shoulders made every step count. We joked about who carried more weight, accusing each other of being lazy. But beneath the teasing was a rhythm, the kind of wordless trust you develop after years of friendship. When I stumbled, Dawson steadied me without comment. When his strap loosened, I tightened it for him. We moved as though we'd done this 100 times before. By late afternoon, we reached the clearing where we'd set up camp. Towering evergreens formed a protective circle around the open space, and the ground was soft with fallen needles. The silence was different out there. Not empty, but alive with birdsong and the occasional rustle of leaves. We unpacked, pitched the tent, and gathered firewood, our movements practiced and efficient. It was easy with Dawson. Everything always was. As the sun dipped behind the trees, we lit a fire, the crackle and glow wrapping us in warmth. The orange light painted his face, sharpening the lines of his jaw and catching in his eyes. He leaned back on his elbows, staring into the flames as if they held secrets only he could read. For a while, we just sat there in silence, the kind that didn't demand to be filled. Then, out of nowhere, he spoke. "You ever think about how different things would be if we hadn't met?" He asked softly, almost as if the question wasn't meant to leave his mouth. I turned to him, caught off guard. "What do you mean?" He shrugged, eyes still fixed on the fire. "I don't know. I can't picture my life without you in it. Like, what if you'd gone to another college, or if we hadn't been assigned to the same group that day? Everything would have been different." There was something in his tone, weight, almost sadness. I brushed it off with a chuckle. "Well, lucky for you, the universe clearly wanted me stuck with you." That earned a small smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. He looked back at me for a moment, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something unspoken lingered there, something I wasn't ready or willing to interpret. We roasted marshmallows after that, competing over who could make the perfect golden brown without catching it on fire. He teased me mercilessly when mine turned into a flaming torch, and for a while, the heaviness in the air dissolved into laughter. It felt good, familiar, safe. But as the night deepened, that strange energy crept back in. Dawson grew quieter, his gaze lingering on me longer than usual, his words softer, almost hesitant. I tried to ignore it, telling myself I was imagining things, that the forest made everything feel more intense. Still, a question formed in the back of my mind. Was something changing between us, or had it already changed without me noticing? By the time we crawled into the tent, exhaustion from the hike pressed down on my muscles, but my mind refused to settle. Dawson lay beside me in his sleeping bag, so close that I could hear every breath he took. The fabric of the tent rustled faintly in the breeze, and the distant call of an owl echoed through the trees. It should have been peaceful, but I couldn't shake the unease building in my chest. I closed my eyes, willing myself to sleep, but Dawson's presence was impossible to ignore. There was a tension in the air, subtle but undeniable, like a string pulled too tight. I had no idea why, but I felt it pressing between us, silent and insistent. That night, as the fire's embers died outside and the forest sank into stillness, I sensed that something was coming, something that would change the way I saw my best friend forever. I was just drifting between wakefulness and sleep when Dawson's voice cut through the quiet. So soft, I almost thought I had dreamed it. "Caleb," he whispered. I stirred, turning slightly toward him in the dark. "Yeah." There was a pause, a hesitation that stretched long enough to make me open my eyes. The only light came from the faint moon filtering through the tent fabric, just enough to catch the outline of his face. He was lying on his side, eyes open, staring at me as though he had been waiting for this exact moment. "Have you ever thought about us?" His words were careful, deliberate, but heavy enough to knock the air out of my chest. I blinked, unsure if I'd heard him right. "Us," I repeated, my voice hoarse. "You and me, being more than friends." The tent suddenly felt smaller, the air thicker. My heart raced, pounding so hard it seemed like he must be able to hear it. For a moment I couldn't move, couldn't even breathe. I searched his face, half expecting to see a smirk, some sign that this was another one of his dumb jokes, but there was nothing playful in his expression. Only raw, unguarded seriousness. "Dawson," I started, but the words died in my throat. He looked down, fiddling with the zipper of his sleeping bag. "I've been holding it in for years," he admitted, voice trembling. "I didn't want to ruin what we have, but I can't keep pretending anymore. You're the most important person in my life, Caleb. More than anyone else. I needed you to know." 1,000 thoughts collided in my head. Part of me wanted to rewind time, to return to the safety of our laughter around the fire, to avoid this entire moment. Another part of me was struck with an aching tenderness I hadn't expected. Dawson's words weren't casual. They came from someplace deep, someplace he had clearly been guarding for far too long. "I don't know what to say," I admitted, barely above a whisper. "You don't have to say anything right now." His eyes flicked up to meet mine, vulnerable in a way I'd never seen before. "Just tell me, have you ever wondered, even once, if there could be something more?" The truth was complicated. I had wondered fleetingly in the quiet spaces of our friendship, late-night talks, moments of closeness that blurred the line between platonic and something else. But I had always brushed those thoughts aside, afraid of what they meant. I had never let myself linger long enough to truly answer. My silence stretched too long, and Dawson misread it. He gave a bitter laugh, though it cracked halfway through. "Forget it. I shouldn't have said anything. Just go to sleep." I reached out instinctively, my hand brushing against his wrist. "No, don't shut down on me. I'm not angry. I exhaled, frustrated with my own lack of clarity. "I didn't expect this. Not tonight. Not like this." His hand shifted beneath mine, not pulling away, but not gripping back either. "I couldn't hold it in anymore. Watching you every day, hearing about who you're dating, acting like I don't care, it's killing me, Caleb. You have no idea." The intensity in his words pulled me under. My chest tightened with guilt, confusion, and something else I didn't dare name. I wanted to comfort him, to take away the pain in his eyes, but I also knew that whatever I said next could change everything between us forever. "Dawson," I murmured, my throat dry, "you're my best friend. That's not something I take lightly. I don't want to lose you." "Then maybe don't." His voice was urgent, desperate. "We could be more. We could be everything." The sincerity in his tone rattled me. I turned on my back, staring at the faint outline of the tent ceiling. The forest was silent, as though even the night was holding its breath, waiting for my response. My mind churned with questions I didn't have the courage to ask aloud. Could I love him the way he wanted? Was I holding back because I didn't feel it or because I was too afraid to? Finally, I whispered, "I don't know if I can give you what you want." The silence that followed was unbearable. I could feel him beside me, still, rigid, his breathing uneven. For the first time in years, the space between us felt like a chasm. I figured, he said, finally, his voice breaking. He rolled over, turning his back to me. Forget I said anything. Please. But I couldn't forget. Not now. His confession lingered in the air, heavy and unrelenting. Every second stretched into eternity, the weight of unspoken emotions pressing down on me. I lay awake, staring into the dark, listening to his quiet breaths, knowing sleep was impossible. That night, something shifted between us. I didn't know what would happen in the morning, or if our friendship would ever return to what it once was. But deep inside, I knew one thing for certain. Dawson's words had opened a door I could never fully close again. When morning came, the air between us was thick with silence. The fire had burned down to nothing but pale ash, and the forest was alive with birdsong, yet none of it felt peaceful. Dawson moved with mechanical efficiency, rolling up his sleeping bag and breaking down the tent poles without so much as a glance in my direction. I wanted to say something, anything, but every word I rehearsed in my head sounded either too cruel or too empty. Coffee? I asked finally, holding up the small camping kettle. He shrugged, without looking up. Sure. The single syllables stung more than I expected. This was the same guy who used to talk my ear off about everything from politics to which movie franchise was overrated, and now he could barely manage one-word answers. I poured the coffee into tin mugs, handing him one, our fingers brushing briefly. Normally, that tiny contact wouldn't have meant anything, but this morning it was electric with all the things we hadn't said. We sat in near silence, sipping, the steam curling into the cool morning air. Every now and then, I caught him stealing glances at me, as if searching for an answer on my face that I hadn't been brave enough to give the night before. My stomach twisted with guilt. By the time we set out for a short hike, I couldn't take it anymore. The forest path wound ahead, shaded by towering trees, but all I could feel was the weight pressing down between us. Dawson, I started, forcing the words out, about last night. He stiffened but didn't stop walking. You don't have to say anything. Yes, I do, I said, quickening my pace to match his. I don't want you to think I'm ignoring it. He cut me off with a bitter laugh, though there was no humor in it. You don't feel the same. I get it. You don't have to explain. His bluntness knocked the wind out of me. I swallowed hard. That doesn't mean I don't care about you. You're my best friend. That doesn't change overnight. He finally stopped walking, turning to face me. His eyes were sharp, searching, but behind the edge was pain. But it does change, Caleb. Maybe not for you, but for me. You don't know what it's like to want something so badly for years and then finally say it out loud, only to realize you've been alone in it the whole time. I didn't know how to respond. His words were heavy, and I felt myself shrinking under them. The truth was, he wasn't wrong. I hadn't considered the depth of what he was carrying all these years. And worse, I had no idea how to carry it with him now. The rest of the hike passed in strained silence. I tried pointing out things, the sunlight filtering through the leaves, the tracks of a deer in the dirt, but Dawson's responses were short, clipped, detached. It was like being with a stranger who wore my best friend's face. When we returned to camp, I checked my phone, relieved to see a faint signal. Without thinking, I sent a quick text to Maya. She was someone I had been talking to recently, someone who made me laugh in a way that felt uncomplicated. I typed out a short message about the trip, about how beautiful the forest was, and when her reply came back, almost instantly a smile tugged at my lips. It wasn't until I glanced up that I noticed Dawson watching me. His expression was unreadable at first, but then I saw the flicker in his eyes, the hurt, the quiet betrayal. He didn't say anything, but he didn't need to. The damage was already done. I slipped the phone back into my pocket, guilt gnawing at me. It was just a message, I muttered defensively, though he hadn't accused me of anything. Yeah, he said flatly, looking away. Just a message. That evening, the silence between us grew heavier. We sat around the fire again, but there was no laughter this time, no easy banter. Dawson stared into the flames, lost in thoughts I couldn't reach, while I poked at the logs, trying to summon sparks of normalcy that wouldn't come. When he finally spoke, his voice was low, almost to himself. It's funny, how you can be so close to someone, think you know everything about them, and then realize maybe you don't know them at all. I froze, unsure if I was supposed to answer. His words cut deep because they weren't entirely wrong. Maybe I hadn't really seen him, not the way he wanted to be seen. And maybe he hadn't seen me either, assuming feelings that weren't there. I don't want to lose what we have, I said quietly, but the words felt fragile, like paper trying to hold back fire. He didn't reply. He just leaned back, arms folded across his chest, eyes distant. The crackle of the fire filled the silence, but it wasn't enough to drown out the hollow ache settling in my chest. That night, as we lay in our sleeping bags, the distance between us felt immeasurable. I could hear him breathing, steady and slow, but I knew he wasn't asleep. Neither was I. The truth lingered between us, raw and unfinished, and I realized with a sinking heart that our friendship was no longer the same. Something had broken, and I wasn't sure if we'd ever be able to fix it. The last morning of the trip felt colder than the nights had been. Mist clung to the trees, curling around the branches like it wanted to stay hidden from the sun. Dawson was already awake when I crawled out of the tent, packing gear with stiff, efficient movements. His silence carried a sharp edge, and I knew it wasn't just the chill in the air that made me shiver. We moved through the motions of cleaning up camp as though we were strangers sharing the same space. Every word I tried to speak fell flat, swallowed by his quiet. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. "Dawson, we need talk." He stopped, his back still to me, hands tightening around the straps of his pack. "I don't think there's anything left to say." "Yes, there is." I stepped closer, forcing the words out before fear could stop me. "You laid everything on the line, and I owe you honesty. I can't just pretend it didn't happen." He turned slowly, eyes tired, guarded. "Fine, then say it." I swallowed hard, feeling the weight of his gaze. "You mean the world to me. You always have, but not in the way you want. I can't give you that. I love you, but it's not the same kind of love you feel for me." His jaw clenched, and for a moment I thought he might explode with anger. But instead his face crumpled, the pain breaking through. "Do you have any idea what it feels like, Caleb? To carry this inside me for years, hoping one day you might look at me and see more? And then to hear that I was wrong all along?" His voice cracked, raw and trembling. I felt my chest tighten, guilt pressing down on me. "I never meant to hurt you. I didn't know you felt this way." "You did," he interrupted sharply. "You just didn't want to see it. All those nights, all those moments, you had to know." His words hit harder than I wanted to admit. Maybe deep down, I had sensed something, but I had pushed it aside because it was easier, safer. By ignoring it, I'd allowed him to believe there was still hope, and that was its own kind of betrayal. "I'm sorry," I said, the words barely strong enough to carry the weight of what I felt. "Sorry doesn't fix this," he muttered, looking away, his hands gripping the strap of his pack, so tightly his knuckles turned white. "It doesn't make it easier to see you smiling at someone else. Like her." The mention of Maya sent a jolt through me. I hadn't realized he'd read so much into that brief text, but now it was clear how deeply it had cut him. His voice softened then, breaking entirely. "I thought if I finally told you, maybe it would change everything. Maybe you'd finally see me, but I was wrong." There was nothing I could say to ease the ache in his voice. Nothing could rewrite the truth. We packed in silence after that, the distance between us growing wider with each step. The forest trail that had once felt like an adventure now stretched endlessly, heavy with the weight of things left unsaid. Dawson walked ahead of me, his shoulders tense, and though I wanted to close the space, to bridge the gap, I couldn't. The car ride back was worse. He turned up the radio, letting the music fill the void, and kept his eyes fixed on the road. I glanced at him more times than I could count, searching for the friend I knew, but all I saw was someone I'd wounded in a way I couldn't repair. When we pulled into my driveway, he finally broke the silence. His voice was flat, stripped of emotion. "Thanks for coming with me." "Dawson," I started, but he shook his head. "Don't. Not now. I wanted to reach out to grab his arm, to make him listen, but the wall between us was too high, too solid. He gave me one last look, hurt, betrayed, and yet still filled with something I couldn't name, and then he drove away. Standing there, watching his taillights disappear down the street, I felt a hollow ache spread through me. For years, Dawson had been my anchor, my constant, the one person I could always count on. And in a single weekend, that bond had been fractured, not because he confessed, but because I hadn't known how to handle the truth. I went inside, sat down on the edge of my bed, and stared at my phone. A new message from Maya blinked on the screen, light and cheerful, but I couldn't bring myself to open it. My chest felt heavy with the weight of everything I had lost, everything I couldn't fix. In the days that followed, life moved on as it always does, but something in me had changed. I replayed that night in the tent over and over, wondering if I could have said something different, if there was a version of us that didn't end with silence and distance. But no matter how many ways I turned it over in my mind, the conclusion was always the same. Sometimes love doesn't bring people closer. Sometimes it exposes the fragile lines we didn't realize we were walking all along. And when those lines break, they leave cracks that never fully heal. I don't know what the future holds for Dawson and me. Maybe we'll find our way back to each other someday. Maybe we'll always carry this distance. But I do know one thing: that camping trip under the stars changed everything. I gained a truth I hadn't asked for, and in doing so, I lost a piece of the person who had meant the most to me. And that is something I will never forget.